There's a strategy that everyone with social anxiety develops. It doesn't get taught, it doesn't get recognized, and it hides in the shadows while all of your pain goes unnoticed. The strategy is this: if I control how much of myself I show to other people, I can control how others will respond to me. It feels like self-protection. It feels like the intelligent thing to do. And in the short term, it works. But here's what nobody tells you about this strategy. It has a cost, a significant one. And for pretty much your entire life, it hasn't been recognized for what it is. Something that is eroding your mental health, and something that needs to be addressed in order for you to recover. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what this strategy is, how it works, and what you can do today to address it. When I created socialanxietyhaven.com, one of the most significant things I found was this: people who struggle with social anxiety are almost never struggling because of who they are authentically. They're struggling because of a strategy they developed to hide who they are. A strategy that is generating the very evidence they're using to conclude that something is wrong with them. I know how that sounds. It sounds paradigm shifting, because it is. If you've been living with social anxiety for any significant amount of time, what I'm about to explain will probably be the most important framework you encounter. Not because it's a cure, but because it finally points at where the suffering you have is coming from. But to fully understand what this strategy is, you have to understand why it forms. At some point in the history of someone with social anxiety, there was a social experience that was registered as a threat. Maybe it was direct. You were humiliated, for example, ridiculed, rejected. Or maybe it was indirect, not being included by your friends, watching connections form between other people while you were left alone. After these experiences happen, the nervous system logs them as data, and the conclusion your mind draws is rational given what you could see. The idea that authentic social expression carries social risk. The idea that if you are who you are, you will be punished by other people. This realization is frightening for a number of reasons. Evolutionarily, it means that you will be abandoned by other people and you will be alone. Cognitively, it could mean that there is something wrong with you and that it needs to be corrected. Emotionally, it could mean that your feelings will be sabotaged. So the mind does something to intervene. It makes you suppress yourself. Instead of being open and expressing yourself around other people, it withdraws. Instead of focusing on other people and their emotions, you begin monitoring yourself, asking if what you said was worthy of punishment or not. This strategy is very detrimental for your mental health, but in the narrow sense, it works and it achieves what it was designed for. By suppressing who you are, the specific negative outcomes it was designed to prevent often don't happen. No one openly rejects you. No one ridicules you. Because what the nervous system doesn't register, because the costs are delayed, diffuse, and arrive without a clear label, the strategy prevents specific negative outcomes it was designed to prevent. But what it can't prevent, and what it actively generates, are three downstream consequences that are far more damaging than any single social rejection. And they're happening simultaneously, invisibly, and with every interaction where the strategy runs. Let's dive into what these consequences are. The first cost is that you lose clarity about who you actually are. This is arguably the most important of the consequences, and I'll be clear about why. Self-concept clarity, or the degree to which you have a clear, confident, and internally consistent sense of your own identity, is built through behavioral feedback. You say something, you observe how it lands, you update your understanding of yourself as a social agent. That feedback loop is how identity stays coherent and alive. Self-suppression, the strategy which mentioned earlier, breaks that loop. When you're consistently not saying what you actually think, the behavioral data you're generating isn't yours. It's managed performance. And you can't build a coherent identity from managed performance. Over years and years of suppressing yourself, the authentic signal that generates who you are internally gets quieter. You reach for a sense of who you are in social situations and find something uncertain and hard to locate. People with social anxiety often describe this as not knowing what to say. But the more precise description is not knowing what they think, because the channel between their internal world and their social behavior has been suppressed through years of conditioning. I experienced this directly. Years into my social anxiety, I genuinely couldn't tell who I was. I would walk into social situations not having any clue of what to say. Not because I didn't know, but because the version of me that I wanted to show was no longer attainable. The suppression strategy had already eaten away the part of me I wanted to be. The second cost is that every connection you make doesn't feel genuine. There's a system in social psychology called the Sociometer, a mechanism that tracks your social inclusion and belonging. What the system does is it regulates your self-worth. When you receive social inclusion, the Sociometer registers a positive signal and self-esteem rises. When you don't, self-esteem lowers. But the Sociometer is very specific about what it counts as real inclusion. It requires authentic input. A managed performance via self-suppression doesn't count as authentic, and it doesn't give the Sociometer the signal it needs. This is exactly why social anxiety produces loneliness without actually being alone. It feels like you're lonely because your Sociometer isn't receiving genuine inclusion signal from other people. It isn't registering that people like you because you aren't being who you are. It's a negative feedback loop. Self-suppression strategy activates, Sociometer doesn't receive a positive signal, your self-esteem lowers, you withdraw from other people, you suppress yourself even more. This is a powerful sequence of events that drives social anxiety, and it's happening completely underneath your awareness. The third cost is that the strategy makes social performance worse. This is the one with the most immediate visible consequences, and the one most people with social anxiety least expect. The whole point of adopting self-suppression was to reduce the likelihood of getting rejected, but it actually makes it more likely, and here's why. Every time you go into a social interaction, a significant portion of your cognitive resources are consumed by the suppression itself. Monitoring what you're about to say, editing it before it comes out, tracking how you're coming across. That's an enormous amount of mental energy running in the background of every conversation. This means there's far less available for the conversation itself. You're not focusing on the other person. You're not spontaneously responding to them in the way that you authentically would. The warmth that you would have surfaced naturally if you weren't running a management program doesn't show itself. And this feeling of hollowness generates negative social feedback. But the worst part about this isn't the fact that the negative feedback exists. It's that it's getting attributed to who you are, not the strategy. For example, let's say you reach out to a friend and they say, maybe next week, and they don't get back to you. You reach out again and they don't respond. Over time, this lack of response will make you feel like you're doing something wrong, that your inability to socialize with other people is a sign of your inadequacy. Instead of concluding from the situation, my friend is busy, you might say to yourself, I am socially incapable. I'm not worthy of being accepted. The cruel logic of this is precise. The suppression strategy was designed to prevent social rejection, but it's producing the very social outcomes that feel like confirmation of the fear it was trying to prevent. And because the strategy remains invisible as the cause, the person concludes the only explanation is that something is fundamentally wrong with who they are. So let's bring this all together. Self-suppression forms from real social pain. In the short term, it does exactly what it was designed to do. It reduces the immediate threat. But running underneath the surface, invisibly, it is eroding your self-concept clarity, starving you of the genuine inclusion signal that real connection requires. The most important thing I want you to take away from this video is not that the strategy was a mistake. It wasn't. It was the best available response to a real threat, built from the information you had at the time. What I want you to take away from this is that it is the strategy, not your authentic self, that has been generating the evidence you've been using against yourself. That realization, when it fully lands, is the beginning of a huge landmark in your recovery process. That's the layer this channel is building towards. If you want to go deeper on what the identity level actually looks like, the next level in this sequence is what social anxiety is actually doing to your identity. It's the direct continuation of what we started here, linked below. And if today was the first time something about your social anxiety finally made sense at the level of the mechanism, the newsletter is where this goes deeper than YouTube allows. Link is in the description below. Subscribe if you want to keep building this understanding. I'll see you guys in the next one.